Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Travis Kaufman. I'm the VP of Product at Apptrinsic. So I'll be your host today. I'm very excited to share with you the topic that we'll be speaking on. We have joining us as our guest speaker, Roi Lavan, who's the former product growth leader at Lyft. He's had a great set of experiences related to customer acquisition, customer lifetime value. So he's going to share with us today how he approaches this topic and how the work of customer acquisition relates to product experience. So before I hand over the reins to Roi, let me cover a couple of housekeeping items. So the first item here is that feel free to relax, listen to the webinar. Don't worry about writing notes and jotting things down or screenshotting. We will be recording this, and I'll be happy to send this out to you afterwards. As well, we will have a section for Q&A. So if you have questions, feel free to ask them as we go, and we'll make sure that we spend time answering them at the end of the webinar. And again, you can ask questions on Twitter using the hashtag product experience, or you can also type into the webinar platform as well. There's a Q&A section, so feel free to type in there. And without further ado, let me hand over the presentation to Roi. Roi, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, great to be here. So before we start, I wanted to chat or talk a bit about who I am. I spent about a decade already on just marketing technology stuff. Joined ConvertRoi very early, helped build the team and the product into a market leader. ConvertRoi was, we'll talk about that in a few minutes, but it was a market leader in multi-touch attribution. This is something that helps understanding what's working and what isn't. Then we got acquired by AOL, spent a few years there building products around analytics and reporting for DMP, the data management platform, DSPs, demand-side platforms, etc. And then Lyft basically asked that I help them to do the same, but make it work just for them, for their business. A crazy business with lots of different geographies and balancing marketplaces. That was a very appealing thing. So I joined Lyft. I actually moved on recently to work on something new and exciting. More on that maybe later. In my free time, I like to blog, check me out on Medium. I'm a really rigid basketball player, I would say. Okay, so the promise of marketing. This is what all of us at marketing or product that is related to marketing and growth say. We want to find people at the right time and get them to convert. For example, if you're looking for people that want to sign up and drive for ride-sharing companies, maybe this is the time to get to them is when they're looking for a job. Hopefully not like this example, when you catch them in the wrong time, but hopefully you get them at the right time with the right message. Sounds easy, right? Well, 5,000 companies support making this a reality. This is from April of this year. Look at how many companies in different segments and verticals of the marketing technology stack are trying to help you and all of us make this a reality. And so one of the key components for making this a reality is attribution, what everyone considers as the marketing holy grail. How do I know what's actually affecting people? Look at this example. You have different prospects coming in from very different journeys. Some of them saw display ads and search ads. This looks like more of a B2C view, but if you add some more content marketing and other vehicles for B2B, this could be B2B too. And the question is, what is really working? What is the contribution of this email as an example for prospect 1? What is the marginal contribution of TV when we look at prospect 4? And each of these prospects, what's actually driving them to convert? So there are many answers to the attribution question. The usual suspects are here. The last click or last touch, this is what Google made their business on. And basically looking at whoever was doing a journey, the last thing that they touched is basically what's making them convert. So there is a story about ConvertRoi's founder's previous company, Roi Lavan. It was an e-commerce company. And when they asked people, how did you decide to buy a $50,000 lamp, a designer lamp for our platform, a lot of people said, well, a year ago we thought about remodeling, so we started checking out different websites. We got into your website, and then after a couple of weeks, we saw your ads on the display. We saw you on an event, and then actually 2 weeks ago we decided to actually buy. We Googled it, and then we came and bought. That's a different story than what Google Analytics suggested, which is yesterday came from Google and converted. So that last click is not always telling the right story or the full story. First click is the opposite. You say whatever introduced this person to our company is basically the reason that they bought. And then some other companies try to solve for this in different ways. And the buzz that Converter basically made its business on is that algorithms could help us solve the problem. If you think about the picture from before, all these different touch points on the path to conversion, you run different algorithms. Converter uses regression-based modeling. Some people use, or other companies use game theory, different ways of statistical methods to understand what's the actual contribution of each of these touch points. Very sophisticated. You can take a lot of factors into consideration, like recency and frequency. Even the weather, we had introduced weather as a factor into our algorithm a few years ago at Convertro. And if you think about an app for delivering food in New York, when it's snowing, they can get 3 times more conversions. Not because of the brilliant marketing, but just because it's snowing. So you can add that factor into your algorithm and tease out the effect of marketing. Very sophisticated, very interesting. Should you use it? I don't know. I saw companies, and specific company that I know of that got to a valuation of billions of dollars and spends hundreds of millions of dollars on marketing. They still use last touch. And when you use non-sophisticated methods, you can have different methodologies that help you then correct, I would say, for not measuring accurately. You can black out. You can basically say, let's not spend on this channel for a month and see what happens. You can look at similar markets and try to run different types of marketing and understand what's working and what isn't in those different markets. But basically, all of these different ways is to get as accurate as possible read into what's working and what isn't, so that you can optimize. So basically, attribution helps us understand what's the real contribution from each of the campaigns that you see on the left-hand side, and what's the cost per acquisition. But what is it that we're optimizing for? Is it the sign-up? Is it actually becoming a customer? Is that the lifetime value that you get? The interesting thing is that you can get different answers if you look at different metrics. So the most important thing is first to understand what are you optimizing for, and then try to improve that. Let's look at a specific example. So let's say that we have channel A and channel B, like in this example, a cost per lead of $10 for channel A and cost per lead for $50 for channel B. Should I abandon channel B? This is so pricey. Well, most marketers would probably say, if not abandon channel B, maybe just reduce the spend by a lot because it's really inefficient. I know a company that really, in this example, abandoned channel B and it did not hurt conversions at all. So it wasn't about reducing spend by a lot, it was shutting it down and see that it's really non-incremental to anything that you're doing. But let's say, if you look at this example, probably reducing the spend on channel B is the right thing to do. But what if I add information? What if we have this conversion rate from lead to actual activated driver, as an example, or an activated user on your account? This means that the cost per activating is actually much higher or higher for channel A if you compare it to channel B. So if I'm optimizing towards people actually using the product and activating, I would make a different decision and maybe actually increase spend on channel B, even though early on it's really expensive. But what if I say that there are different segments and they're worth differently, and the percent of segment, let's talk about ride sharing as an example, maybe if they work for the competitor, they're more valuable to you. So if 90% of that segment that is more valuable to you exists on channel A, what should you do now? Should you increase or decrease the spend on channel A and B? So the most important thing is to understand what are you optimizing for, and do it as downstream possible to what matters to you. If you think about the value that different customers get, it's really different, and you need to understand that. Think about drivers that want to meet interesting people. They already have a 9-to-5 job. What is the value that they're getting? They're getting to know different people. But if you compare them to full-time drivers, people that actually want to just earn a living, and they work full-time for a ride-sharing company, they actually want money, and that's what drives them. So different segments require different treatment, and they get different value. And if you give them more of that value, they'll retain more. And so adding more value and improved experience means that they have better lifetime value. You improve your ROI because, and that's my name, by the way, that's the usual joke that I didn't start with. But your return is higher on the same investment that you already made. So your ROI is improved. So if you already acquired them, adding value means that your return improves. Let's talk about a bit about the value. If you go to Airbnb and watch the sign-up process for different people, it's really different, and they stress different things. If you sign up, for example, if you have the sign-up popping up before you show the value to the customer, you're probably not getting as many sign-ups as you can. This is increasing friction before you actually prove the value. So like I said before, look at the product experience, connect it to your acquisition, look at different segments, and treat them differently. Let's look at some concrete examples. Here are some tools that you can have to understand and enhance the product experience. On the left-hand side, you see cohort retention analysis. That helps you understand how well your customers are retaining. If you introduce more friction, what happens? With your new feature, let's say that you introduced more friction, it could lead to different cohorts behaving differently. How does it affect people that know your product and have used it for a while versus new customers? On the right-hand moment, you can talk about aha moments. These are really great to hook people to stay and retain. To take this example, this is from Lyft platform as an example. If I'm a person that wants income and I suddenly see that I don't need to wait 2 weeks to the end of the month or the next payout period, I can actually get paid instantly. That's a delightful moment. And this is an aha moment that will help me then understand the value of this platform and continue to use it moving forward. So in general, cohort analysis and aha moments are really important. Let's dig in some more and look at specific examples. This is a screenshot actually from the Extrinsic product. If you think about what you see here, you have the orange line and the green line are two different segments. The orange represents users within a trial version. The green line represents all users. So you can see here that the green segment has a slight drop off on week 1, and then it stabilizes and actually retains better than the orange one. So your drop in week 1 is an actual opportunity to get the user engaged. You can increase the entire curve if you get them to not drop basically on week 1. One other thing that you can see here, if your retention line trends towards 0, there is probably some kind of leak in a product and you potentially haven't achieved product market fit. So what you want to see in this cohort analysis is actually that the line continues horizontally towards the future and above 0. I think 25 to 50%, like in this example, is pretty good, but depends on your business. What's also important is to measure specific cohorts, because you see, or specific segments. You see 2 segments here, the green and the orange, and both of them retain a different pace and different way. And so looking at them together in aggregate will just make you miss out on different information. You should probably look at them differently. What you can see in the chart below is the actual retention rate for across different weeks for different cohorts that started at different times. For this example, April 9th through April 15th, this is the cohort, and then what happens in the week 1, week 2, and so on. By looking at this chart and the color coding, you can also identify potential issues if you have them. Let's say, for example, that every year in December 31st, your car inspection expires for everyone. In that case, you would see a drop at that specific date. That specific date occurs at different weeks for different cohorts. So you will see it as a diagonal color, brighter, lighter color, green here or orange, across all cohorts. If something, if you introduce a feature and it causes a problem in week 4, as an example, for everyone, then you would see a drop off here at week 4, a lighter color across the green cohort. So this is a very useful analysis to understand if you have specific differences and if you actually improve or could improve the experience for different users and cohorts. Let's talk about aha moments. This is to illustrate how you can guide users through onboarding and into their aha moment. Remember, we talked about payout before. Here you can see how from in-app guidance, where you tell them what's going to happen, you remind them through SMS, you send them an email, different multiple touch points, and then eventually you remind them the convenience of getting paid. And reminding them to collect the payout. So guiding them through and then actually onboarding them into the experience helps them retain better, because you actually get them to see the aha moment rather than it getting lost somewhere. And then another example for aha moment, think about a driver that actually wants income, but I want to earn as much as possible. When you tell me I can get extra money just for doing what I'm supposed to do anyway, this is kind of a delightful moment. Do X rides by tomorrow and get, for example, $50 can be an aha moment as well. Here is through SMS. And yeah, I think
so great. Roi, thank you so much. So I found it interesting you talked through the different attribution models that are used on the customer acquisition side and how the specific metrics that you're looking at, depending on what metric you're optimizing for, you get very different action items from that. So I found that very interesting, so thank you. So at this point, I'd love to offer to the audience here, anyone who has a question, please feel free to post your question in the Q&A box, or feel free to post that on Twitter as well, and we will put Roi on the spot to get you a great answer. No pressure. All right, so let's see here. The first question, will you share the slides? Absolutely. Yes, we will be sharing the slides, and since you are registered and listed as an attendee, we'll send those out to you in the following days. So again, feel free to post additional questions here in the chat box, and we will get you some answers to the best of our ability. So here's one that's just come in. They say that they don't have Lyft's resources. So where do you recommend they start?
Great question. I think that a lot of time the data is the starting place. And a lot of companies say, well, we have so much data that we're collecting, we probably have everything we need. But I think understanding what are you trying to accomplish and what is the problem that you're facing, uh, and then finding the right data for that is important. So instrumentation here is key. I can give an example about a certain company in the ride-sharing space that basically wanted to increase signups. Well, we wanted to understand what makes people convert and then improve that. But actually, the question that we had to ask ourselves is what makes them not convert. So if you go today to the Lyft sign-up page, you will see that if you scroll down, we asked you, or Lyft asks you, are you still interested in driving for Lyft? If you say yes, great, go sign up. If you say no, then we ask you, well, why not? And the answer there helps then create the strategy. What happens if you just don't have time? What happens if you don't have a car? Other options that exist. And so that helps us really understand what is the problem that we're facing and then starting to optimize. So I would start by getting the right data, and for that, instrumentation is key.
Got it. All right, great. So we've got a lot of good questions coming in. We've got so a few related questions I'm seeing here. So Roi, can you discuss how retention plays within the acquisition process?
Yeah. So I think if we go back to the example of different cohorts that retain differently, this is net gain if you retain people more. If you think about cost per an activated driver as an example from Lyft, then if that driver is retained for a week, then you just paid a lot of money to get someone to drive for a week. But if they drive for 3 years, then you would have paid much more at the beginning. So I think retention rate actually helps you with the ability to pay more for more valuable, more or segments that retain better, and then decide to pay less for segments that aren't. So you can either pay the same and improve your ROI, or you can actually pay more, keep the same ROI, but get a lot more demand.
Got it. So retention plays the impact. If I could try to summarize, retention plays a role in increasing the return that you get for that same level of investment to acquire that driver, in an example. Okay, great. These are great questions coming in, folks. Keep them coming. Feel free to post out on Twitter or in the chat box there in the webinar platform. Here's another great question. So what company do you think is doing a great job on the acquisition side outside of Lyft?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think it really depends on the business. I can give an example of Dollar Shave Club that did a great job in acquisition through podcasts. There are different businesses. The major thing is to understand who your audience is and where to find them. So companies that are B2C usually find, Facebook and Google are very saturated these days. So you want to find other places, if you're B2C, other places to find users. In the example of gig economy startups and companies, that would have been job boards, which isn't an intuitive channel. But if you think about Craigslist and Indeed and ZipRecruiter and other channels, people that are trying to find a job and are looking for some kind of gig are actually in there, more so than maybe they're on Facebook or Google, even though everyone's on Facebook.
Yeah.
You can see pretty much every company that you see their ad in Facebook is probably doing a really good job, because Facebook is really hard to optimize.
Great. So we have another question here. If conversions are not available, so an example, I guess a CPG type company, what would be some alternate metrics that can be used to monitor impact of improved product experience?
Great question. Well, actually, CPG is an example for when conversions are actually available. through onboarding offline information, your CRM, through a company like LiveRamp and other matching companies. So often you can actually find a way to match the data that you have and make available conversions available. But there are also other metrics that you can look at. Some of them are more long-term. Brand equity surveys, Millward Brown and other companies do that for you online, so you can understand roughly what's the expected increase or decrease in your brand compared to your marketing efforts. And I think every company has different proxy metrics that they can decide on. Maybe the fact that someone stayed for a few minutes in your website already indicates that they'll go and visit the store sometime. So I would invest time in identifying that metric online and then optimize towards that metric.
Nice. Let's see. These questions are coming in great, folks. Keep them coming. We've got time. So another question here. Would you have any resources you recommend on best practices for product experience?
Yeah, I think we can maybe send it over.
Yeah, we'd be happy to follow up with some resources there.
There are lots of, a lot of these experiences are around UX. So UX resources and different sites that are analyzing best experiences. Several several websites like that. Intrinsicpoint.com is one example, but we'll send it over.
Yeah, I can add that to the follow up.
As a product manager, I can say that while these different sites are really helpful in understanding best experiences, I always default back to the question: what is it? What is the problem that we're trying to solve for? Using the cohort analysis, using other different information about our users, understand where we have potential issues, and then try to optimize the experience towards that. There is an interesting example from Pinterest from a while back that's maybe an urban legend or not, but that they said, well, we see that people that do their first spin, their experience is great. They're retaining much more. And so they made it larger and almost forced people to pin the first spin. They didn't really change their downstream metrics. So they wondered why. And then they did some more digging and they understood that it's not about pinning, it's about getting the value and the right content. So when they started optimizing the content, people actually wanted to pin it. And then that meant that they got the value and they actually retained more. So the product experience is about what is the value that the customer is getting, and then giving them more as early as possible, rather than like hacking it from a UX perspective.
And you've got another question here related to where you get started. So where do you recommend investing your time to optimize first, on the acquisition side or within the product, the aha moment side?
I think it really depends on which one is worse right now.
Yeah.
But since you already paid for those people that are using your product, that's probably a better way to start. Understand what different cohorts, different segments you have, which one isn't getting as much value as they can, and optimize that. That's free. Almost.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's great. All right, we got a few more minutes here, so if you have questions, feel free to post them in. We have one here. Do you have real-life examples that illustrate how improving the product experience directly led to higher conversions?
Yeah, I mean, in the example that I gave before, when you ask people why don't you want to drive for us? Some people say, or a significant portion maybe said, well, we don't have a car. So it's interesting because they wanted to drive up to San, but they didn't have a car. So one of the things that Lyft did a while ago was introduce a rental program. And by making that rental program obvious in that page, it increased conversion rate. So you could direct people back immediately there to say, I don't have a car, and then they go to the flow where they can rent a car and actually drive it.
Very slick. Very nice. Let's see, another question related to cohort analysis. How were you tracking and developing cohort analysis before Extrinsic?
Well, this is relatively easy query. Basically, the most important thing is to instrumentation, to have the event flowing into your internal servers. And we used a tool, we call it Mode Analytics. It gives you a direct SQL query access to the database. So then you can start looking at the different events that happened, people signing up, when they signed up, and track them over time.
Great. All right, we'll go ahead and wrap up in one more minute. We'll give 1 more minute for questions back to Roi. So if you have them, don't be shy. Feel free to post them in. Let's see here. All right, great. Well, that looks like a wrap, everyone. Thank you all for joining. Oh, we have one more here. Hold on just 1 second. Perfect. All right, great. Well, I'd like to extend a special thank you to Roi for joining us today. Thank you for sharing your experience. It's been very insightful. I'd like to leave the audience today with an offer from Apptrinsic. So, delivering product experiences that drive growth, feel free to get started today. You can go to apptrinsic.com and start your free trial. You can look at the information that is available to you within your products and take advantage of it, just as Lyft has done. Thank you, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.